what caused you to leave the film industry for, what, 2 years?
2 years, I did.
To do some soul searching?
I needed a break. I got my first national commercial when I was 9 months old. I had gone through the highs and lows, the riches and poors, been through a divorce, marriage and a divorce rather quickly. And, as I used to say, my life was trying to have having a picnic at the runway at that time in my life. It was very, a lot going on. It's very turbulent. And I was approaching 30. I was in my late 20s. And you kind of hit rock bottom emotionally. I wasn't, suicidal. I wasn't destitute, but I was emotionally done. I had been doing one thing and one thing only for so long. Even though I dabbled in other hobbies or career paths, ideas coming up, I had only done one thing. And I needed a break. I just needed, it's one of those things, is this really what I want to do? Is this something I want to continue doing? Is this something I want to pursue and put the next chapter, the next 30 years of my life into? When you start coming up on 30, you do a lot of soul searching. You're not a kid anymore. Your 20s are coming up, being over, and you got to start thinking, things haven't gone as I thought they would, or I'd hoped they would. Is this something I want to keep doing? And it was the best thing I ever did. I actually went and sold cars. I went and sold cars for a Ford dealership, for Galpin Ford. And it happened by accident. I was having lunch with the owner's son. We were good friends. And his father came in, who owned a dealership. He came in, he looked at me, and he said, you don't look too good. And he said, you look like your soul's been bought and sold down the river a half a dozen times. And I said, yeah, it's been a rough go. I'm going through a divorce, going through bankruptcy, and I'm just, business closed down. One of my partners went a little cuckoo. And he said, well, why don't you come sell cars? And I said, what are you, nuts? Sell cars? And he looked at me and he said, you've been peddling that crap you call art for the last 20 years. You made a living doing that. You got the #1 Ford dealer in the world. Cars sell themselves. You never went to college. You don't know how to do anything other than what you do. Why don't you learn and get an education? Learn how to listen. Learn how to sell. He goes, I promise you, when you quit here, if you decide not to stay, you will take what you learn here and be better at what it is you think you can do. And boy, was he right. That was my college education, selling cars.
What was that first morning like, getting ready to go to Galpin?
Well, they stuck me in a 4-week training course. So I went and learned how to sell for 4 weeks under Lou Brown, who was a very world-renowned car sales guru that used to tour the world and teach salesmen getting ready to hit the floor how to sell. I had always been told I could sell ice to an Eskimo, and we had 18 graduates in my class, and I was the last one to sell a car. It took me 3.5 weeks to move a car. And it got to the point where my boss pulled me aside and said, if you don't sell a car today, I'm gonna request you to be transferred or fired. You're not moving anything. And there was a cop that used to drive by the dealership. He lived in Palmdale. He worked at LAPD, nicest guy in the world. He used to stop by and visit me every other day. And, he would I encountered him one day on the lot and we hit it off. And I have a heart for cops, and he was a neat guy. And I thought he wanted to buy a Ford Explorer, and he would talk to me about it every day. And finally, at that time, my boss yelled at me, said, if you don't sell, the guy showed up that day, he said, you don't sell him a car today, you're done. So I walked out, and he wanted to see me, and I'm walking around a lot with him. And he looked at me and he said, you seem a little like something's up. What's on your mind? He's a cop. They're intuitive, right? He was a detective. He's like, what's going on? You seem a little. I said, sir, if you don't buy a car for me today, I'm going to get fired. And he goes, you're kidding me. Your boss said that? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, we can't have that happen. I like it in the blue. Let's wrap this up. Never saw him again. He bought the car and never saw him again. The cool thing is I sold another car that day. And then I started to become a good salesman. It was just about doing that. And that's what I try to use in teaching a lot of the kids about writing their first screenplay, going on their first audition, working on their first show, shooting your first project, even if it's on your phone. Until you do it, you don't know what it's like. And then once you do it, it gets easier. And you'll fail. You'll make a lot of mistakes. Do it again, fail again. But every time you do it, you're not going to make the same mistake twice. It's like, I've been at this a long time. I've been a producer, filmmaker going on 30 years. And I make mistakes every time I make a film. I make mistakes, but I don't make them twice. So every time I make a movie, I make a new mistake. And then next time I know I won't make that mistake again. And you grow. And that's what I try to encourage the young storytellers coming up, is it's okay to fail often, get it out of your system.
When did you feel you were ready to go back in? You had sold some cars, maybe you got your confidence back up?
I committed to do a year. I ended up working 18 months with Galpin, and it was the most incredible years of my life. I'm still very close to the ownership. I'm still very close to a lot of people I sold cars with, and I'm still close to some of the customers I sold cars to. I was in 18 months. There were some issues with a manufacturer that was not Ford, but that was very public when they had tires that were ripping off of cars, and I had sold probably 300 Ford Explorers over my 18 months there. And I came into the office one day and had over 300 messages on my phone after taking a weekend off, and it was customers freaking out. And I realized that this is probably a bit more than it's time. And I had been nurturing that. I had passed on 2 movies that had come to me during the time I was there because I wanted to commit to the family that brought me a job and provided me a very good living working there and an opportunity. But it was the fire debacle with the Ford Explorers that was the end for me. That's when I turned in my name plate and turned over my sales books and said, I'll give you 2 weeks. And they said, we don't do that here. We don't, and that's just a policy because they don't want you taking customers in case you sell cars elsewhere, which I never did. But that's why I left. It was time, and I stepped right into a great film that I did with my father, and never looked back. And that was in 1998, 99.
Have you ever thought about taking that story of working for the car dealership, working for Galpin, and turning it into a screenplay?
I've thought about turning my experiences into working in the car sales business many times. There was a great film done years ago called Suckers, which shows the dark side of a dealership. Now, the cool thing about a dealership, and Galpin is a first-class organization. I mean, they're the best in the world at what they do. But there's still the people that work there that make it interesting. The family runs a tight ship. They're the best in the business. They sell more cars than anybody. But you still have the riffraffs. And I say that with fun because what I learned is in Lou Brown's class. He said, nobody sells cars for a living because they said, I want to sell cars for a living. People, if you think about it, everybody who sells cars didn't grow up saying, I want to sell cars. They failed at something else. They went through a divorce. They had hardships. They lost a business. And it was so true. I remember in our class that we had 18 people graduate, 35 of us started. Everybody else had a story about a career that failed or a job that closed down or a divorce or a circumstance. So you have these unbelievable people from all walks of life, from all nationalities, all different classes of financial and background and pedigree. But there was a film called Suckers that I watched, and it was so scary on the nose when it came to the business of the business that I thought you're never going to touch that. So I developed a TV series that when I was working with David Madden at Fox, I got very excited about. I was developing TV shows for Fox when David was there. And everybody loved the concept. They thought it was great, but you'll notice there's a reason that car sales shows are not on TV. And that's because the number one sponsorships of your ad dollars are usually car manufacturers. You know, you've got Mazda, you got Buick, you got Honda, you got Chevy, you got Kia. It's endless. And they take those primetime slots to show families what they could be driving. So if you are going to tell the true story of the business, you're not going to get those ad dollars. So I found through some really high up connections in television sales, broadcasting, and decision makers that you're not the first who's come with the idea. It's a great idea that we can't touch because that's where our dollars come from. So, but now that there's a streaming ability, I should recircle that. You know, that's something worth thinking about because, you know, if you're doing a show on Netflix, you're not worried about selling Cadillac commercials.
This is off topic a little bit, but then Glenn Ross was okay. Wall Street, Wolf of Wall, so it's okay to see one sector of sales.
Yeah, but that was in car sales, right? It's the fact that Buick, if you watch a network show, watch This Is Us. I know you're probably doing what I do and skipping through your commercials on DVR. I guarantee you a third of the ads you see on any show are going to be from car manufacturers. If you show a show that shows the dark side of that business, how do you get a car company to pay for ads of that show. You're going to have a hole in the advertising. But you're right. But those were films. Glengarry Glen Ross was a great film. Wolf of Wall Street, great film. But Wall Street is its own thing. They're not buying ad dollars. They're just, pulling the strings of our globe any way you like. But I just thought of it as we're sitting here talking is, you can do series for Amazon, you can do them for Netflix, you can do them for all sorts of different outlets that don't require ad dollars coming in. So maybe it's time to dust off some of those and see. And it's also nice because you can kind of cross some lines and push the envelope on those platforms too.
You could do an ensemble thing like with Crash where you focus different stories, people getting ready to go to his training class. Anyway.
Best thing I ever had happen was I remember taking a family of 6. I remember taking a very nice conservative family of 6 on a test drive in a, I forgot, I think it was the Windstar, Ford Windstar family van. And I remember the father was driving. And the mother was sitting, and I'm sitting in the next rows with all the kids. And all of a sudden, the father, he's doing like 55, 60 miles an hour down Sepulveda Boulevard. He looks up, slams on the brakes. And what happened was one of the salesmen had taken a nap in the back of the Windstar and woke up during the test drive. And father's driving, all of a sudden, this guy with his hair all disheveled. It could have been a porter or somebody popped up from the back. I mean, that's kind of stuff that happens at dealerships. I mean, you're dealing with crazy people, all walks of life. They're party animals. I've partied with, Poison, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, and Van Halen all on the same night with Charlie Sheen on the side. And I will tell you, the people that work at car dealerships, they can drink them all under the table. I kid you not. That's a whole different breed.
That's awesome.
Sorry.
No, that's really funny. That's really funny. That's a great story.